I found Nancy's work in February of 2024. And it came to me because an old coach of mine said, Shayla, I'm hosting this special Zoom call, and I really, really, really want you to come. Now, I have not talked to this coach, Isaac Stegman, for probably 2 or 3 years. And so he came out of the blue. And Nancy, it was his enthusiasm, it was his passion, it was his conviction that was like, wow, I really need to be on this call. I share that with you guys because often you're thinking you're calling people and they're not showing up. But I promise you, if you have conviction and belief and enthusiasm, you can transfer that to someone else and you can change somebody's life. Because I was not able to make that Zoom call, but I felt that transference and said, I'm going to watch this recording. I don't know who this Nancy lady is. I don't know what shadow work is. I've never really thought about this idea of wholeness and operating from a place of wholeness. But I'm curious and I love to learn, and I'm going to be open-minded, and I'm going to make the time to listen to this. And Nancy, from the minute I met you, I felt this connectedness to you, your personal story, and also the impact that you're wanting to make in the world, and the path by which you do it, the way in which you got right through the bullshit and into my heart and got me to see perspectives on myself that I'd never seen before was phenomenal. Since meeting Nancy over Zoom, I called her and said, we need to be friends. We need to do things. She came and flew out to my Slay with Shay in May of that year. She did a private mastermind for me in March of that year. I did an 8-week session with her in July of that year. And then I signed up in her Levin Life Coaching Academy as a student for a 10-month, I'm still in it, a 10-month certification program that is very intense, thoughtful, profound, and effective. Nancy's written so many books that are very, very powerful. She gives of herself everywhere that she can, and she is literally changing the world one person at a time through her various frameworks like reinvention coaching and what I did. Nancy's been kind enough to come on Catalyst one other time and just blew our minds talking about shadow commitments. And you can find that recording inside of the portal. And today, Nancy, I asked you to come on and talk about boundaries. And this is something I still very weak in. So this is selfish for me, but I just want to report from the pulse checks that I'm reading. This group of achievers, super driven folks are struggling with comparison at times, struggling with distractions, buzzing mental chatter, being indecisive, family burning us out or tuning us up, getting into a rhythm or keeping our rhythms and routines, and trusting and delegating, just to name a few. All some things I think you might relate with. So the floor is yours. Please help me welcome everybody. Nancy Levin, with some hellos, some waves, and take it away.
Thank you, Shayla. I'm really honored to be back here with you in Catalyst, and really excited that you invited me to talk about boundaries. And the first thing I really want to presence for anyone who is completely new to me, I have lived decades of my life as a type A, overachiever, perfectionist, workaholic. So I am, preaching to the choir here from the place of knowing what it's like. And I am someone who thought for decades that what made me so exceptional at my job was having no boundaries. And so I, at the age of 45, 15 years ago, set and held my very, very first essential boundary. And I've not looked back since then. And so, as we dive into boundaries here today, I first want to share that we have to begin with knowing that we will never be able to set and hold a boundary that we don't believe we deserve. And so we can't talk about boundaries without talking about self-worth. And from everything Shayla hit on as she was bringing me on, this really is at the core, because the degree to which we feel worthy is the degree to which we allow ourselves to have needs, to speak our truth, to honor ourselves without guilt or apology. And I will often say that when we are putting attention on ourselves in this way, it can really be unfamiliar. And so this concept of selfishness often arises. Isn't it selfish to put attention on ourselves in this way, to focus on our own needs? And I'm the first to say, yes, it is selfish. And selfish in this context is good. Selfish itself is not a bad thing. And in fact, when we disown selfish and we put selfless on a pedestal, we're in that either or of one or the other. In the word itself, selfless, less self. And so we want to actually be able to look at boundaries through the lens of giving ourselves permission to consider our own needs at least as much as we're considering the needs of everyone else around us, at least as much. And that's a baseline. And if that already has you cringing, just keep breathing, because the next level is to actually be able to consider giving ourselves permission to consider our own needs even more than we're considering the needs of others. And then the real boundary ninja move here is to consider our needs first before we consider the needs of others. Nowhere in here am I saying we don't consider the needs of others. I really want you to just check in and see if you're hearing through this binary of either or, because it's the both and. And so we have to be willing to give ourselves a seat at the table, not just take everybody else into account. And so from here, we have to look at, how am I currently measuring my own sense of worth, my own sense of value? I know for me, for years, I measured my worth by what I could do for others, what I could produce, what I could achieve. And I prided myself on being the one and the only one, on my indispensability, on being ever available, and the one who could make everything happen for anybody else. And I would be willing to guess that I'm not the only one in this room who would use that definition for sense of worth and value. And the truth is that that version of me was trapped, was not free. She was hustling for her worth. And she thought, that being boundaryless was how to be lovable and valuable and needed. And so eventually I really had to ask myself, who am I if I'm not actually trying to earn my worth? Because my worth is inherent. And what do I actually open myself up to wanting and desiring if I believe I am inherently deserving? So worthiness is not something you earn. It's something you reclaim. It is not tied to how much money you make, or how much money you have, or how many clients you serve, or how indispensable you're making yourself. And you do not find your worth by looking outward. And I really want to hit that point home, because so many of us, me included, expended energy seeking all the external validation. I collected all the gold stars. And here's the deal. No gold stars, no amount of gold stars will ever be enough to validate a hole that needs to be filled from within. I see your comments in the chat. And Paul, I see your comment. How do you measure it then? So again, what if it's not about measuring? And what if it's about knowing? And that's the shift here. That it's not something that you need to earn or prove. It's not something you need to defend. It's simply something that is. And how do you begin to shift if you move through the world with an inherent knowing as opposed to a chasing. You find it, you reclaim it by truly coming home to yourself. So, as we move into this, just begin for yourself, and you're welcome to put it in the chat. How have you been up until now? Chasing, trying to prove, trying to earn your worth through performance, through productivity, through praise, being the one who never needs anything. And I see here, yes, exhausted. Yes. Because when we are continuously chasing something externally that needs to be resolved internally first, we will exhaust ourselves. Absolutely. Right. I see this. Chasing all the time. It's never enough. I'm never enough. Not asking for help. Hyper availability, being shining, always performing for others' expectations, being impressive. Praise as a love language. 100% people pleaser. Productivity. Success at work. Yes. Every single thing you're putting here. Yes, yes, yes to all of this. Yes, yes, yes to all of it. Yes. Because the other thing is, as we're talking about self-worth, and I like to talk about the intersection of self-worth and net worth, because when we have a belief that we are not enough, we also have a belief that there isn't enough. And so we keep ourselves small, and we keep ourselves in the place of being unable to receive. And what ultimately happens is that we are living other referenced lives. We are constantly scanning outside of ourselves. What do they think? What do they need? What do they feel? What do they want? And we lose sight of any connection to what do I need? What do I want? How do I feel? And so now that we're, uncovering some pieces around worth, I want to move into boundaries here. And I want to take a moment, and I want you to pop in the chat what comes up for you when you hear the word boundaries. What comes up for you immediately? And just pop it in. Risk, a wall, limits, restriction, rules, being rigid, no. Being selfish, rejection, yep, no. Can't afford to set them. Entitlement, protection, distractions, rules, lanes. I love this. Guilt, disappointment, protection. Yep. Losing a deal, can't afford the risk of saying no. Arrogant. So good. So good. So good. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. Some people think I can't afford to set boundaries. Some of us relate to, I'll be a bitch if I set a boundary. Some of us relate to boundaries as being ultimatums or walls, I saw in here, or risk. You might think boundaries are selfish or mean. And the truth is, none of us were taught what boundaries really are. So here's how I define boundaries. Boundaries are the limits that we set around what we will or will not do, tolerate, or accept. I'll say it again. Boundaries are the limits that we set around what we will or will not do, tolerate, or accept. Boundaries are not about controlling anybody else. In fact, boundaries are not about anyone else doing anything different at all. Boundaries are about taking full responsibility for what we are willing to do or unwilling to do, and knowing how we're going to take care of ourselves. So my boundaries are very personal. They're between me and me. Same for you. Your boundaries are between you and you, even if they might involve another person. And so what this does is it immediately moves us out of the place of blaming others and sitting in being the victim. And it moves us into the place of responsibility and empowerment. And so I'm going to invite you here to see boundaries as expansive instead of the way you might be used to relating to them as restrictive. Boundaries are expansive. Boundaries are actually the way that we carefully choose and consciously curate our own lives. So boundaries are not bad. but they are self-honoring. Boundaries don't push people away. They create the conditions for authentic connection. Boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're also about saying yes. And here is a big one. If your boundaries are being crossed, you are the one crossing them. So it is a myth that other people cross our boundaries. We are the culprit when our boundaries are crossed. Your boundaries are simply what's okay and not okay for you, and it's not anyone else's job to uphold, honor, or even respect your boundaries. It's yours. So your boundaries are your own non-negotiables. And again, this puts you in the driver's seat of being the one who is the governor of your boundaries. Allison, could you role play an example of some common boundaries crossed in our businesses? Without even role playing, I can simply say, every single time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you answer the phone when you have said, I'm not working today or in this hour, every time you convince yourself you're indispensable or that you need to be omni-available, every time that you meet with a client at a time that you've already designated for family. Any of those are ways that we really easily cross our own boundaries. And
Can I ask a question on that? In our business, there's so much like one client wants to cross our boundary, and usually I have no problem having a boundary with the client, but then there's a third person that referred us this client. And then I feel like I'm failing that person who trusted me, who gave up their boundary to help this person. Do you know what I mean? Like there's more people involved than just the one person of setting the expectation. So like a realtor or a builder or whoever. And I listen to your podcast, Nancy, all the time. And I was like, yes, just say no. I'm going to practice it. And this is how I'm going to do it. And then I go to do it and I'm like, oh, it didn't really work. And so that's what I'm curious about is like, in a real life, do you have okay, I can cross it a little bit, or is it just hard no? Or how do you actually stick to the boundaries?
Your boundaries are yours to set and hold. So no one else is setting them for you. So you have to also set realistic boundaries for yourself. And whether, again, no matter who else is involved, can you give me a real life situation in terms of what you just described? Because I don't feel clear on what you're saying.
Yeah. Saturday, we have my whole extended family at the lake. We're on the boat. I get a call from a client who I haven't heard back from in a year and a half of following up. They want to buy a house now. They were contingent. Now they need to be non-contingent and they need a bridge loan. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm on a boat without my computer. I won't be able to help with this right now. Yep. And then I got a call from the agent being like, are you sure there's nothing you can do? We need to put an offer in by 3:00. So my heart breaks for this family who wants to get into this house. So I look at my husband who turns the boat around and drops me off at the dock, and I leave all of my kids and whole family in the boat while I go inside and work on a pre-approval for 3 hours. They write the offer. They don't get an accepted offer and don't call me back on Monday to even say thank you. And I know better and I know it. And I don't need, it was a $250K loan. I don't even need it.
Right.
But so I feel for people because I care. And I know we all do it. We all do it.
Yes. But so yes, you care. And there's a payoff you get in terms of I'm the hero. I'm going to save the day, because that's important to look at as well. And I know that this is a very, very common scenario, And the bottom line is you still are in the driver's seat. You get to decide, I'm unavailable until X time. Or my husband's turning the boat around and I'm getting off and getting back on land. But here's the kicker. If you choose to get off the boat, how do you do that and not feel resentful? Because Resentment is a telltale sign a boundary needs to be put into place. And you have to remember that you have choice here. And if what you're telling me is, I don't even need this, I don't need this headache. And then yes, like Tanya, we teach people how to treat us. Because if you're not willing to uphold your own boundary, you certainly can't expect anyone else to respect it when you say you're unavailable. But you're the one who just breathe with me for a minute. What would have happened if you didn't even respond to the message because you were actually having family time?
They would have just called. She would have called another lender, which also would have been okay.
Right. These are just things to consider. If you're really having family time, how present are you to your family if you're still looking at your phone the whole time? And what would it be like for you to decide, okay, I'm putting my phone on do not disturb, or, you can put the outgoing message, I'm unavailable until X time, I'll get back to you then, or whatever it is. But these are the things to consider. And again, there's no right or wrong. If you decide I'm going to go and I'm going to bust my ass and put this offer in, whether it gets accepted or not, that's your choice. But what I'm inviting you to do is to do it consciously, not knee jerk. And to really be able to say, I'm consciously deciding to do this. Whatever happens, happens. But I'm showing up in this particular way. And it's worth it to me. It's worth it to me to leave my family to do this. And the really important thing here is and it is a huge switch. The really important piece here is to not just go into the knee-jerk, unconscious autopilot, I have to do anything I can for somebody else. It's to actually take a pause and really consider, is this truly a yes for me? Am I doing this out of deep desire? Or am I doing this out of fear? Am I doing this out of scarcity? Am I doing this because I don't want someone to be mad at me? Am I doing this, all of that. And so it's really important to know what is having me say yes, because every yes to someone else is a no to you. And so even yes to go get off the boat is a no to your family. And again, no judgment either way. It's really just about getting clear for yourself consciously.
That was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I see there's a lot in the chat here. Yeah. And again, is that I'll just share this as well with boundaries. Because we don't learn boundaries at an early age, once we really learn how to set and hold self-honoring boundaries, we become a beacon. We become a model of those for our children, for our friends, for our family, for our clients. Because there's an easy way, no matter what business we're in, there's an easy way to go into grandiosity around, I need to always be available to every single person at every single minute. And the truth is that there are actually very few professions on the planet where that is truly the case. And so the question becomes, what am I making it mean about me? What have I convinced myself about the way I tie my worth and value to my omni-availability? And again, yes, of course, we need to make money. We need to have our livelihood. It's not the either or. It's how do we actually create a sustainable life for ourselves? And we do it with boundaries. And again, this is why it's so important to remember that other people don't cross them. We cross them. And we could say, if we really wanted to get it to start from the core, Allison, we could say that you crossed your own boundary by even looking at your phone or answering that message. That was that was you opening the door. That was you crossing your own boundary and opening the door to something further. So every time you say yes to someone else, it's a no to you. And we all do this. We all have had the experience of saying yes, and then in like a split second, how the hell am I going to get out of this? Or knowing I don't want to do this. And so having our clear no and yes also puts us in the place of not having to be in that dread of how do I get out of this? And so again, it's every time you answer a message or a call when you have said you're off the clock, let's say. And if you right now believe you are 24/7 on the clock and you don't give yourself off the clock, that's a boundary. That's a boundary you're crossing for yourself as well. It's it's all of these different ways. And so we cross our own boundaries because we're afraid. We're afraid of someone going to someone else. We're afraid of being seen as difficult or ungrateful or selfish or unavailable because we want to be liked, we want to be trusted, we want to be relied on. And because we have confused love and success with overfunctioning. And so we really have to look at what is the cost of having no boundaries? What is the cost of always being available? Who do I become when I cross my own boundaries versus who I am when I know my boundaries and I hold them? And what really might be possible if I stopped abandoning myself in order to serve someone else's needs? Because that's really what we're getting here. And it's not just enough it's not really just about saying no all the time. That's not what this is about. It's understanding the nature of our yes, because our yes has a lot of power when it's freely given, not extracted. And your yes has integrity when it comes from alignment, not obligation, when it's not coming from fear. Your yes is sacred when you are included in the conversation. And so boundaries are not just what you say no to, they are also what you're going to say a full body yes to. And here's the thing, the life you want, the one where you are not leaking your energy or contorting yourself into a pretzel to please everybody else, the life you want on your own terms that's sustainable and fulfilling and meaningful and satisfying, that life requires you to set and hold boundaries. You need to know your limits. It asks you to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop waiting for permission, and to turn inwards so that you can source yourself and bring yourself into the equation. And so this is all going to come down to what is your priority. I see the chat. Always afraid of disappointing people if I say no and assume my family will be fine if I disappoint them because they love me. But my son is who really suffers because I'm teaching him that work is more important than he is. And then I see Donnie said, I have a 23-year-old son who has gone full no contact with me because of this issue. Thank you for sharing that. And, those become cautionary experiences because we have to really look at what is the message I'm sending and what is my priority here and what is most important to me. And how do I show up in alignment with my values and my actions lining up? And how do I actually really know my own non-negotiables? In what way am I willing to put myself in my calendar as a non-negotiable, even if the biggest deal of the century was coming down the pike? And again, you can always make a choice. You can always say, you know what, this is my boundary. This is the time I've set for myself, and I'm going to make a different choice today. You can do that. You have full control, but do it consciously instead of unconsciously. So you're not acting out of that place of resentment rising. I would also say that when we're talking about boundaries, to start small and to start with yourself. Because really what boundaries do, when you are clear on your own limits about what you will or will not do, tolerate, or accept, what happens is you begin to be able to trust yourself in a way you likely never have before. And once you can trust yourself to stay accountable to yourself, it actually becomes easier to set boundaries and hold them that involve others. Because again, it comes back to you. You're the one who has to hold it. You're the one who needs to honor it.
Nancy, can you give me an example of setting, if we're not setting to others so far, but we're first building our self-trust and accountability with myself? What's a boundary to set with myself?
Yeah. Yes. So for example, in my calendar, every single day, I block out anywhere between an hour and 2 hours for a hike. So I live in Boulder. I live in the mountains. I go for a hike. I go for a hike 6 days out of 7 days a week, sometimes 7 days, but I put it in my calendar. It is non-negotiable time. And if it can't happen at 8 a.m. and it needs to happen at 10 a.m., I move it. And if it can't happen because I said yes to something that I really want to say yes to, I move it. Or I say, I'm not available at that time. I'm available at this time. So that's one way I hold a boundary with myself. I also go to bed at night with my phone in airplane mode. So I wake up in the morning with no messages incoming. I get up and I meditate and I journal, and then I put my Wi-Fi on. So that's another boundary I'm holding. I'm holding time to be with myself before I'm letting the world in. So anything like that you're willing to do just for you, and here's the kicker, it really is that it's for you. And here's the thing, we often don't do these things just for ourselves because there's no one there to give us a stamp of approval. There's no one there to give us a gold star. Good for you, you meditated today. Or good for you, you took a hot bath in the middle of the day. Or good for you, you did whatever. So we have to start giving ourselves our own gold stars and our own stamps of approval. But this is the place to begin. To really create in your calendar specific times, even I don't care if you start with 5 minutes. Shannon, silly question. Will your alarm still work if your phone is in airplane mode? Yes, it will. Absolutely. And I use my Insight Timer app for my meditation with my phone still in airplane mode. Yep. Let me see. Shayla said, with Nancy's help, once I realized that I was trying to be impressive to everyone, I finally changed what would impress me. Yes. Yeah. Rock said, Shayla and Catalyst has taught me this. I'm forever grateful I took 2 weeks off and went to Europe for the first time in 20 years. No calls, no emails, just me to regenerate my mind and soul. I love it. And I will tell you, I just did 3 weeks in Europe walking the Camino. No, I left my laptop at home for the first time in my entire life, and I'm 60 years old. Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that we can do to reinforce that we are trustworthy, that we will hold a promise to ourselves. And again, you can start small. It doesn't have to start big. And in fact, I'm the queen of the micro. It's better to start small. It's better to start small. And to really start looking at what boundary do you know you need to set and hold, or boundary do you need to recommit to in order to become the version of you're here to be. Because if you can set your sights out ahead of you into your future self, what boundary are you going to want to set and hold in order to be able to step into and merge with that version of you? And again, it's looking at what's your priority. It's looking at how can you stay connected and committed and accountable to yourself first and foremost. Boundaries don't need to be verbalized. They can be, and there are ways to do that, but they don't even necessarily need to be verbalized because, again, it's up to you to hold it. And this is really the way that we are able to tune into knowing that we are worthy of the boundaries we set. We are worthy of the time, of the choice, of the protection, of the peace, of the freedom, of the permission.
Nancy, one thing we talk a lot about in our industry is about time management and time blocking, as saying, okay, if I'm going to do 1 hour of green time of prospecting, of making the calls, of working my top 50 list. But then all of a sudden, the fires, the distractions, the social media notifications or email, those continue to come in. How do you relate boundaries to doing that kind of a task?
Yeah. I mean, again, I will, there are the airplane mode on my phone is my best friend. I will put my phone in airplane mode when I need to focus, whether I'm, on a Zoom or whether I need to I'm writing a blog for this week or whatever it is, so that I'm not switching. What do they say? It takes 23 minutes to get back into the task, that there is no multitasking because it takes 23 minutes to recalibrate to the task you were doing before you got distracted. And so as counterintuitive as it sounds, if you set yourself up to finish a task in a half an hour and then another task in the next half hour, instead of constantly going back and forth, you'll be able to be effective. So it is about tuning out the distractions. But again, part of allowing ourselves to be distracted, the ways we cross our own boundary, what am I making it mean about me if I turn off the distraction? What do I make it mean if I'm not available? What do I make it mean I might miss something? It's the way we start to also hold ourselves in a more important way if we're always available. And so we also have to look at, what am I making all of this mean about me? And so this is also why I was saying, look at what your priority is, what it is that you need to accomplish in this particular time, and then give yourself full permission to turn off anything that is going to be unsupportive of that. There is something called Parkinson's Law, which essentially is paraphrased, the task at hand takes the time allotted for it. So if I say I'm going to do something in a half an hour and I give myself a devoted, focused half hour, I will do it. If I say I'm going to give myself a week to do this task, you better be sure it's going to take me a whole week. And so we also want to look at the ways in which we're setting ourselves up for success or failure. So
let's answer this last question by Daniel, and then we'll get you onto your LLCA group.
No worries. Maybe another good example of boundaries not related to time management would be not working with agents, clients not willing to respect your time or follow your process. Yeah, again, the boundary can be for you. Here's who I'm willing to work with. Here's who I'm not willing to work with. That's a boundary. Here are the kinds of people I'm willing to tolerate. Here are the kinds of people I'm not willing to tolerate. Here are the situations I'm willing to accept or not willing to accept. And so you get to decide that for yourself. Like I said at the beginning, your boundaries are personal to you. And you might have very different boundaries around an exact same situation than I would have. And that's great, as long as you are showing up really conscious to hold your boundaries. And that's really, more than anything, what I'm inviting you to do is to really step into the consciousness instead of staying in the autopilot.
I would love you guys to just put in the chat what stood out for you, or a boundary that you're going to set for yourself, something that you took away from this last few minutes, just as a reflection. And then we will wrap on the last page. What I will tell you, Nancy, is doing this work and listening to you is good on my nervous system. It feels like the truth. And when something is aligned with the truth for me, it's not frantic, it's not anxious, it's not like forcing it. It's still scary as hell. It's still completely foreign. It's still like, oh my gosh, how could I do it? But it feels like the truth. And I think with any change, I think for me, I have to have the courage to lean in and be committed. I'm not going to be good at this. I know I'm not good at it. I'm still been that undeniable, hyperactive or hyper available, impressive person. And I've been abandoning myself a lot over the years. But in meeting you, I've wanted to have sustained success in this career. I've wanted to be able to love people genuinely and help people thrive and succeed without being resentful, because I love it. And so thank you for my nervous system is very happy with your work.
Thank you. This has been really, really wonderful. And I'm really thrilled that, thank you for everything that you've been sharing in the chat. I'm really thrilled for the resonance and that you're receiving impact here, because again, I honestly believe that our boundaries are expansive, and our boundaries are the way that we are, that creates the scaffolding around us as we're building the life we want to live.
So fun reading all your comments, you guys. I know we are all interconnected, and we are all on the same path together, and we can do this. Nancy is going to be a VIP speaker at Slay with Shay, and she's going to be going deeper into worthiness. That is September 14th. But Nancy, I'm so grateful that you've continued to come into Catalyst. You've been so welcome. It blends perfectly to what we're doing. And I promise you, we will carry forward this work in the future sessions. So thank you. I'll let you head to your LLCA group. Thank you, everybody. Give Nancy
Thank you.
love.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Shayla.
Nancy.